Adding and subtracting integers, day 2. Again, we need to first talk about what an integer is. Integers are positive and negative numbers. Adding numbers with the same sign. When I say same sign, I mean adding two positive numbers or adding two negative numbers. The sign would be the negative or positive in front of the number. To add numbers with the same sign, you're going to add the numbers and you're going to keep the sign. So if you're adding two positives, your answer will be positive. If you're adding two negatives, your answer is going to be negative. You're going to keep the positive or negative signs. Examples of this. We have 1 plus 6. 1 plus 6 is 7. It's going to be positive because both of those numbers are positive. Now when we move to the next example, we have negative 4 plus negative 6. In this case, again, I'm adding two numbers that have the same sign, but this time my two numbers are negatives. So my answer needs to be a negative, and 4 plus 6 is 10. This next example has three numbers that are being added together. All three of those numbers are negatives. So what I can do is I can go ahead and they all have the same sign. So I'm going to go ahead and use the rule of if you have the same signs, add the numbers and keep the sign. So we're going to just go from left to right. Negative 2 plus negative 3 is a negative 5. And then the negative 5 plus a negative 9 gives me a negative 14. The last example for this rule is 5 plus 19. These are both positive numbers being added together, so my answer is going to be a positive 24. Adding numbers with different signs. Different signs means one of the numbers is going to be positive and one of the numbers is going to be negative. To add numbers with different signs, you're going to subtract the numbers and you're going to keep the sign of the larger number. When I say the larger number, I'm talking about the absolute value, which means like if you had a negative 10 and a 5, technically your negative number is always going to be the smaller number. But when I'm talking about keep the sign of the larger number, I'm talking about the absolute value, the number with the largest absolute value. So if you had a negative 10 and a 5, you would actually keep the negative because 10 is greater than 5. So examples of this, we have 8 plus a negative 2. 8 is positive, the 2 is negative. So we're going to go ahead and subtract the numbers. 8 minus 2 is 6. And my answer is going to be positive because 8 is positive and greater than the 2. The next example, we have negative 7 plus 3. Negative 7 is 7 is larger than 3, so we need to keep the sign that goes with 7, which is a negative, and subtract the numbers. 7 minus 3 is 4, so my answer is negative 4. The next one, we have 7 plus negative 10. Again, I have different signs. I have one positive 7 and a negative 10. I'm going to subtract the numbers. 10 minus 7 is 3. I'm going to keep the sign of the 10, which is a negative, so my answer is negative 3. And then the last example, we have negative 5 plus 12. We have different signs, so we're going to subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the larger number, which is going to be a positive, and 12 minus 5 is 7. Subtracting integers. You can think of subtracting as the same as adding a negative. So an example of rewriting a subtraction problem as adding a negative would be if we look at the problem 3 minus 7, that is going to be the same thing as 3 plus a negative 7. Notice what I've done is instead of the negative sign being a subtraction symbol, now I've made it a negative in front of the 7 and I've put an addition sign between the 3 and the negative 7. Now we can use the two rules that we just talked about. I have a positive 3 plus a negative 7, so I have different signs. I need to subtract the number, keep the sign of the larger number, so this answer is going to be negative 4. Next, these examples, we have 4 minus 10. Again, 4 minus 10, I'm going to first rewrite it as 4 plus a negative 10. Now I have different signs, so I need to subtract the numbers, which 10 minus 4 is 6. Keep the sign of the larger number, which is going to be a negative. So my answer is negative 6. This time, the next example, negative 8 minus 5, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it as negative 8 plus a negative 5. Now I have the same signs. Both of these are negatives. So I'm going to add the numbers and keep the sign. So the answer is negative 13. Again, this third example, I'm going to go ahead and change the subtraction to adding a negative. So I'm going to have negative 7 plus a negative 12. Now I have the same sign. Both numbers are negative. So I'm going to add the numbers and keep the sign, which gives me a negative 19 as an answer. And this last one, if you look at, we have 16 minus 15. Okay, the difference between this problem and the last problems is the first number, in this case 16, is larger than the number that we're subtracting. So do not make this problem harder than it needs to be. Think about it. If you have 16 and you take away 15, you are going to have a positive 1 left. So the answer to 16 minus 15 is 1. The last rule that we need to talk about is when you have a special case. When you subtract a negative, that is going to be the same as adding a positive. It's the same thing as, it's also called a double negative. Examples of this would be, we have 7 minus negative 8. Notice the subtraction and the negative symbol are right next to each other. So we have two negatives right next to each other. What happens is I can take both of those, subtraction and negative symbols, and I can write them as a positive. So 7 minus negative 8 is the same thing as 7 plus 8. Well, 7 plus 8, they're both positive numbers. 7 plus 8 is 15. To rewrite this next one, we have negative 13 minus negative 12. Notice the first integer is negative, negative 13. That negative is not part of my special case or my double negative. The only negatives that we can change into adding a positive are the two that are right next to each other. So negative 13 is going to stay negative 13, but instead of subtracting a negative 12, I'm going to be able to add a positive 12. So this is negative 13 plus 12. Now I have different signs, so I need to subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the larger number, which is going to be a negative because 13 is greater than 12. And my answer is negative 1. Next I have negative 9 minus 14. I put this one in here to kind of try to trick you a little bit because this one does not go with the special case double negative. This one does not have two negative or a subtraction and a negative symbol right next to each other. It has a negative 9 minus 14. I can, however, rewrite it as adding a negative. So I could rewrite it as negative 9 plus a negative 14. Now I have the same sign, so I need to add the numbers and keep the sign, which gives me a negative 23. The last example, we have 14 minus a negative 9. This is the special case double negative because I am subtracting a negative 9 from 14. Remember, subtracting a negative is the same thing as adding a positive, so I can rewrite this problem as 14 plus 9. And 14 plus 9 is 23. In the previous lesson, we had talked about solving addition and subtraction of integer problems using models and number lines. You can still solve these problems using models and number lines. However, it's going to be faster if you can start to find the pattern and use the rules, so that you just drawing the models and everything can take a little bit more time. So practice the rules, look over the rules, and see which ones apply.